in the early morning hours of Sunday, September 1st of this year, a little over a month ago. Defenseless people in Camp Ashraf were attacked. They were assaulted. The camp was invaded by people who were committing an act of terror against the people in Camp Ashraf. You have seen the videos. I've seen them. I've seen the photographs. And you can tell by the photographs of the brutality of this act. They weren't just killed, they were brutalized. And those that survived the first gunshots were taken and assassinated. This was a deliberate act of terror against those defenseless, unarmed people. Long ago, the MEK gave up the right to defend themselves and gave up their weapons. Long ago. And the invaders knew that. And that's why they acted with reckless abandon and a quest for murder. That's what they did. This was a deliberate act of genocide against the people in that camp. Specific individuals were not assassinated, not because the outlaws spared them for any reason, except to capture them, hold them hostage, and then brutally interrogate them, which is what has happened to 7 of those individuals. So they were defenseless. Ironic enough that the only thing they had to defend themselves were the blue UN helmets that they tried to use to protect their life. Because you see, the UN just wasn't there helping out, making sure that this place was secure. Someday, those people will be captured that committed this act of terror. And what ought to happen to them is they ought to be tried on the international scene for war crimes. Yes. That's what ought to happen to these individuals. You know, missing in action was the Iraqi security force. They have the moral and legal duty to protect the camp. Well, where were they? Well, I surmise they were probably having lunch with the Iranian government over what's taken place in Camp Ashraf. That's just my opinion. But they were supposed to be guarding the camp. And this was not an action that took place in just a few minutes. It took a while. It took a while to track all those 52 people down. Because some tried to hide. Some tried to defend themselves. Some tried to find safety in Camp Ashraf. But there was no place that was safe. So door to door, house to house, the outlaws went seeking your friends and your family. This ought to upset the world conscience about the time we live in 2013 and a group of terrorists can go in and annihilate an entire community and brutally do so. Bring the perpetrators to justice. Yes. But also, as we have said on the previous attacks, do not let this happen again. But yet, we preach that. There's a crime, people are killed, whether it's Ashraf or Liberty. We bring attention to it. We say it's awful. But it happens again. Bring the perpetrators to justice. This is it. Today is the day of accountability. This is too much. So the world, Iraq, the United States, the United Nations must present outrage and accountability for what has happened to these people. You know, the Ashraf residents by the UNHCR are designated as asylum seekers. Let them get asylum. Of course, we're still giving money to Iraq. American money. We're shut down. It's interesting. The government shut down. We've cut back spending over here in the United States, but we're still sending money to Iraq. If I had my way, no more money to Iraq, because until we get an accountability of what happened to these people, we just make it clear you're not getting any more American money, Mr. President Maliki, unless there's an accountability to who did this, and second, to ensure that these people are safe. Is that too much to ask before you get American money? It is not too much to ask. So let's stand our ground on this. Myself and 33 other members of the House have written a letter to Secretary Kerry informing him that it's our request that we cut off aid, stop aid to Iraq until there's accountability, until we can also know that the folks in both camps are protected. I've also written a letter to Secretary General Moon asking him to do all he can to get the UN to actually protect the people that have not been killed in Iraq, the Iranians. My own opinion is the Iraqi government and certainly the Iranian government are in cahoots. You'll have to look that word up in the dictionary. We say that in Texas. They're in cahoots together to make sure that the people in Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty are persecuted. And I believe they were both involved in this latest raid. That's my opinion. So, let's find out who did it. Let's make sure that the people are protected. The voices of the innocent cry out from their graves for the world to take notice about how they were killed and murdered. Justice demands that we do something, because justice is what we do in this country. And that's just the way it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here at this most important briefing, which occurs at such a critical time. What is on my mind are the horrifying events of September 1st. That is when the unimaginable happened, when Iraqi security forces carried out a massacre of 52 residents at Camp Ashraf, where Iraqi troops tied the dissidents' hands behind their backs and shot them in the head, where some of the victims were women, and where they set fire to the buildings. This is outrageous and beyond belief. This is why the UN and the U.S. condemned the actions, and why I condemned the actions. In September, I sent a letter to Secretary Kerry and urged him to use any and all tools at his disposal to ensure that the remaining refugees at Camp Ashraf and Liberty are provided strong security. I urged the immediate release of those kidnapped and said that we have an obligation to ensure the security, safety, and basic rights of those refugees. And we must continue our efforts to ensure that the residents of Camp Liberty are safe, and that's why I co-sponsored House Resolution 89, which condemned the deadly earlier attacks in the year. I join you in mourning the losses of these residents and in renewing my commitment to fighting for the safety of the residents at Camp Ashraf and at Liberty, and ensuring that the hostages that are now held are turned over and not turned over, and that their safety is indeed guaranteed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. It's difficult to follow that footage. We have given, as our country, the United States, assurances to support the residents at Camp Ashraf, and after the horrendous events of September the 1st, which are so hard to look at the faces of these people and see that film and to think what happened there, to know that our assurances maybe have not been upheld as they should have been. Prime Minister Maliki of Iraq needs to be told and will be told that the hostages need to be treated humanely and they should be released as soon as possible. He should apologize. He should try to make, there's not much he can do to make right, but treating the hostages is the least he can do. And we need to be calling on John Kerry, which we will, my friend the Secretary, to uphold the U.S. commitments to the residents who are deemed protected persons by our actions in 2004 and as asylum seekers by the UN Refugee Agency in 2011. There are certain rights that they have coming to them in that capacity, and the United States and the UN need to live up to our values and our commitments. It's extremely difficult to see what's happened, and we need to make sure that the remaining residents at Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty are treated well. I will work on behalf of those residents and also see that justice is done. Thank you very much.
What a nice way to start a Wednesday morning. Thank you for that. In the interest of time, I won't go into detail. I just will pretty well endorse everything that Congresswoman Shue said. The massacre was inexcusable, indefensible, and I appreciate you all being here, appreciate you inviting me. Look forward to it as the day develops. Thank you, sir.